Good afternoon, everyone. I, CA Chetan Jagetia, Treasurer of Ahmedabad branch of WIRC of ICAI, welcome you all to the last and the final session of National Conference on Statutory Bank Audit. The session of Audit on Advances, one of the most anticipated and one of the most frequently asked questions that have arrived from is the audit of advances. So we are eager to hear from the esteemed faculty, CA Chirag Bakshi, who is from Vadodara. Can we have a good round of applause for him? Quickly starting with this, would request Kalpesh Bhai to give a brief introduction of sir.
Good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon. Yeah. It's giving me immense pleasure to introduce the today's learner faculty, Mr. Chirag. He has completed his CA final with rank holder. He has already rank holder 3 times in the CA courses. Also, he is a fellow member of more than 30 years. He is doing a practice in the central audit of State Bank of India. So we are going to get the more benefit from practical aspect of the question, whatever the question. And here also we have given the topic of advance to him. So he will justify the topic, whatever the topic we have assigned to him. Also, he has the chairman and committee member of various committee. I am not giving a name of the old committee. It will take more time. Right now, I am giving first of all, give a brief round of applause for the sir. So now, sir, floor is yours.
Yes. So good afternoon. બધા આગળ આવી જાઓ. આઈ થિંક આપ ખાલી જગ્યાઓ તમારો અવાજ મને નહીં સંભળાય તો જવાબ નહીં આપી શકું. KPIs have been set. હું SBIના બધા જવાબ તમને આપીશ. ઓડિટ ઓફ એડવાન્સ હું બહુ સરસ બોલીશ. તો તમારા એક્સપેક્ટેશન થોડા ઘટાડી દો. ટુ બી ઓન ધ સેફર સાઇડ ફોર મી, રાઈટ? સો બિફોર વી ગો એનીવેર, એ સ્ટાન્ડર્ડ starting by any speaker. So I'll come to that after the next slide. I hope it plays. Watch carefully. There are some people in foreground and there are 2 people fighting. Right? Watch closely what is going to happen. Okay. So people in foreground. Okay, let me do it this way. If this was an audit situation, તો જે ફોરગ્રાઉન્ડમાં હતા એ કોણ હતા? જે ભાગી ગયો એ કોણ હતો? અને વન હુ વોઝ કોટ, હુ વોઝ ધેટ? Very good. So you are expecting to be caught. So the auditor was caught. But who person who ran away? Manager. Who were those in the foreground? They were the consultants who advised management to do this. Auditor certified and got caught. Right? So, I am trying to frighten you. I am trying my best to frighten you. The reason is, in these 2 days you would have learned in every subject that you need to do documentation. Correct? So, even if you are doing through the computer or around the computer or with the computer, without the computer, you still need documentation. The first audit part of audit process of all these things is advances. Why? I'll give you a hint. When you ask the branch for any data, what is the first thing that you will ask? So let me first give you good news. I will not go through the entire thing. You can read it later, right? So now, without worrying कि बहु वार लगाड़ give me this answer. Why? So how many places in a bank's financial reporting would an advance created at the lowest level have an impact? Have you ever visualized? एक एडवांस कोई ले जाए 5 लाख रुपया ले गया, कोई 50 करोड़ ले जाए, कोई 5,000 करोड़ ले जाए, कोई 10,000 करोड़ अनसिक्योर्ड ले जाए, 10,000 करोड़ अनसिक्योर्ड लो. What is the impact of that in various places in financial reporting of a bank? If you know that, then you will be very serious about this subject. So what is the obvious place it will hit? Asset side. What is the other obvious place? Income side. What is the third place? Capital adequacy. Right? What is the fourth place? No? Maybe all of you are not. So how many of you have never done bank audit? ये तो हमारा fundamental question. कोई बैंक ऑडिट કર્યું જ નથી એવું કોઈ નથી નહીં આ. ઓ માય ગોડ. તો આપણે પાછી મળીશું. તમે એકલા જ છો ડિટેલ માટે. રાઈટ. સો ધીસ gives me good comfort that there is only one person who has never done bank audit. So now I will ask lot of questions. So we all know કે એડવાન્સ કેમ આપીએ છીએ, રાઈટ? વી આર ટ્રાઇંગ ટુ, બેંક ઇઝ ઇન બિઝનેસ ઓફ ગિવિંગ એડવાન્સ. अच्छा, 4th, 5th and 6th places we will discuss later. There are 6 places that advance will hit in a financial reporting. એ પછી આપણે આવીશું. અને આ બધા ક્વેશ્ચન છે, they are rhetorical. Most of the answers are part of the question. એ કોઈ રિકવરી માટે એડવાન્સ ના આપે, એસેટ ઝડપી લેવા માટે એડવાન્સ કોઈ. It is not given just so that I can proceed against them and then take over the asset. I am not in that business, right? Neither I am in business of going to DRT and every time fighting with that person. I am not in business of giving money to lawyers. So I am in business of lending, and the consequences are all these other things. So when you do audit of advance, don't get carried away and start insisting कि केस करी दो, NPA करी दो, right? You have to apply your mind. If it is to be an NPA, it has to be an NPA. But there are business compulsions, like any business. Would you give the same insistence to your other clients to change their accounts? A private limited company, LLP, even a listed company, would you sit on their head and say, no, a bad debt kari na? Would you do that? Then why bank? There is an answer for that also. Why bank? Because you are not appointed by bank, you are appointed by RBI. But from last year, that is a myth. Okay, bank appoints you, RBI only gives a list. It does not take any responsibility of your appointment or otherwise. That is not to say that you should not be independent. But I am only trying to say that if you are trying to apply business mind to your other clients, you should apply your business mind to bank also. Fair playing ground, level playing field. So these are some of the rules that are applicable. Beware, section 20, 20A, 21 and 21A give the power to RBI to control the advances. So everybody reads circulars of NPA, IRAC, there is a circular on advances, there is a circular on restrictions to give advance. How many of you have read that? Restriction on, no? I think you should start with that. Okay? How many of you have read guidance note on audit of banks? એ ભેગી તો લઈ જજો. કદાચ આમ you might ચેપ લાગે તમને બેંક ગાઈડન્સ નોટનો. So keep this reading material with you, refer to it frequently, because if you misapply, do not apply or forget to apply, આ પેલો એક પકડાઈ ગયો. બરાબર, ફોર્ચ્યુનેટલી આપણે ઓડિટર માનીએ છીએ, ઓડિટર નહોતો, પણ ઇટ કુડ બી યુ ઓર મી ઓલ્સો. સો બી વેરી કેરફુલ of applying, and this what RBI is now doing and doing it frequently is questioning the auditor with a simple letter that we have come across this situation in XYZ account and you were the auditor, please explain why you have not done this, with no intention of going after you. Right? એવો લેટર આવે તો ગભરાઈ નહીં જતા. But that is where your test of documentation and your knowledge of all the RBI regulations and the circular lies. Okay? So, before we go through or jump some of the slides, I think we should look at the penalties that were levied in last 1 month on 5 banks by RBI. Now, I have tried to keep all the paragraphs without the name of the bank. પણ ક્યાં આવી ગયો તો વાંચી લેજો, it doesn't matter because it's in public domain. Now, can you read this? What is the first one? Contravention of subsection 2 of section 19. It deals with investment, where the borrower, there were shares pledged by the borrower company which were more than 30%. Right? When ultimately when the bank decided that it will take shares against the loan, it became more than 30%, and the regulation says that no bank will hold more than 30% in any company, specifically when it is a borrower. Okay? So it may or may not directly impact you, but you should remember that every section, every circular comes from a section in banking regulations. So next one. However, now this is an issue which directly affects all the auditors, including the branch auditors. So if floating rate loans not benchmarked against MCLR, can a branch auditor find out? Point out to Paji. Can you find out? Can? Yes or no? At least say no or say yes. Specifically MSME. Okay, specifically is not required. Any loan not benchmarked to MCLR, can any auditor find out? Yes. So how? Correct, but how will you see? MCLR is in public domain. Question is how will you, so whatever data request that you have sent, this goes back to that, must include the rate of interest applied against the list of advances. Loan balance file, okay, whatever name you call it, right? In that, they will give entire detail. They may not give you PAN, or they may not give you name, or they may not give you account number. Something they will mask, because otherwise they will have a problem in now this DPDP. So, but that is where you will, once you get a list of all the accounts with all the interest rates, you will definitely be able to see what is benchmarked and what is not. એક ક્વેશ્ચન હતો આગલા સેશનમાં કે મારે સેન્કશન જોવાની કે નહીં, જૂની જોવાની કે નહીં, નવી જોવાની કે નહીં. How will you come to know that what is that interest rate coming from? Because interest rate comes from sanction. So sanction 100% જોવાની for the accounts that you are tested in sample. 100% sanction નથી જોવાની, સેમ્પલની 100% sanction. So that is first part of your document, right? That is where, so maybe you will have to go beyond sanction. You will have to see what was proposed, why it was proposed like that. Can they propose it like that? Whether regulation allows them to propose like that. કે MCLR સાથે નહીં. RBI has picked a bone. Now recently they have started to argue that all the banks are having bulk deposit rates which are not in line with the regulation. Somebody gives 50,000 crores or 10,000 crores or 2,000 crores of deposit, then all banks are negotiating way above the regulation rates. The consequence is that their current account and savings account deposits are falling because they are not interested. How many savings account customers I will have to collect to make 10,000 crore deposit? Against that, one person walks in and gives 10,000 crores. I'll say, okay, I'll give you instead of 7%, 11%. Hypothetically. Right? So that is another bone of contention. Similarly, so that is where RBI is coming from. That if you are, it may be your business, but business cannot be run in a manner that 5 years from now, you will land everybody into trouble, including the person who deposited at very high rate. Okay. The second, first one is a repeat. We can look at the second one, where they are saying that the information for click and these things were not given to the information companies in time. Again, where does the branch auditor come in this? Can you tell me? It is why this, you may think that our audit of advance માં આવું બધું ડ્રામા કેમ ચાલુ થઈ ગયું? This is absolutely part of audit of advance. Because one of the documents that you will take is CRIL, right? Central Registry for Information on Large Credit, where the data population has to be automatic. So if there is a default today, then automatically it is uploaded to RBI site which runs the CRIL. Same information has to go to the credit rating these companies, and those companies will then appropriately change the rating. If you delay it, then everything goes out of hand and everything becomes manual and discretionary. So branch auditor can definitely ask for this CRIL information, even your CFR, Central Fraud Registry, and see if there is any delay or default in submitting the information to the bank, that is RBI. Right now, of course, they have insisted on automation. All banks are claiming that it is automated, default, but that is only to be tested. Till then, we don't know. And the last one is very crucial. Every point here relates to a branch auditor. Not to say that somebody defaulted in branch. What RBI is saying is that you do not have the system. This bank does not have the system. But what is the derivative of that? Derivative of that is if you are going to that bank, a Bank of India ne penalty thi for this purpose, only last week. If you are going to Bank of India or any other bank, remember these 4 points are directly covered by branch audit. Did not pay interest to certain deposit account as per schedule of interest rates. This is criminal, right? I hope you all agree. Levied SMS charges to invalid phone numbers. Gross negligence by the bank. Of course, I am not saying that you go to that level and check phone numbers, but I am saying that due diligence on your part, at least the documentation to say that we asked for data so many times, this data is restricted, not available, whatever, and that we have tested, and whatever we have tested, we have found okay or not found okay. Not found okay may not result in any adverse report, but it will definitely result in an observation which has to be escalated, right, to your central auditor. Bank failed to benchmark interest on floating rate loans to MSME, same like earlier bank. CRIL report. So these banks are doing, all of them are in the same boat. Right. So now we come back to 4, 5 and 6, where the financial reporting will impact, advance will impact financial reporting. Okay. The fourth one, which of course you may or may not know, is liquidity coverage ratio and net stable fund ratio. Because assets have to match the liabilities, and it percentage of asset, higher the percentage of asset, better is the LCR or NSFR. And the fifth is provisions. whether standard or otherwise. Now remember, NPA is also an advance. Don't take the two separately. If you take data of all advances where they will mark NPA for you, or you can take in two parts, top 100 advances, top 100 standard assets, top 100 NPA, whatever way you want to audit. So you need not do 100, I am just any number that you feel is good. These are 20, you can read it later, I will circulate it. I will give it to the branch and they can circulate it. So restriction on loans and advances, there is a separate circular, all the details are given then. Here only there are 3-4 lines which says that RBI will decide what type of loans or advances bank will give and to whom. Restriction on remission of debt. So if a director or director's company or company in which a director is a partner has a debt to the bank, then it cannot be remitted. I mean, it cannot be cancelled by the bank without permission of RBI. Power to control advance. Of course, there is a section which says that you can't give advance to director or their company or where they are partner, right? But still, they have said that before the regulation, if you had given a loan, you can't cancel that loan. They have to repay and repay as per schedule or in advance. Okay. So, has anybody covered earlier data analysis part of advances? Right. So, that is the most important part in audit of advance because you will look at comparatively. I am saying if you are benchmarking parameters of any circular, may it be IREC circular, may it be loans and advances circular, it can be interest rate circulars, it can be your IBC circulars, whether ICAI has been entered into or not. It could be any of these things, but if those parameters are benchmarked, then you can easily work out which accounts to take in sample, which borrowers to take in sample. Remember, when you take any facility or any account of any borrower, you must also test whether that borrower has more than one account in that bank. Don't restrict yourself to a branch. Because when you take a list, they will give you customer ID and they will give you account number. And you can ask them that for this borrower, how many accounts are there in the bank. While you may audit only the account in your branch, which is perfectly fine, but you have to be careful because if there is an NPA somewhere else, and this is the standard asset, then there is some problem in the advances. There is another bone of contention that RBI has come up with and which is relating to nature of security. What RBI is saying is that if the advance is secured, so specifically in agriculture, let me go first to that. What is happening? All the banks are taking land as a security for agriculture advance. Now it is not permitted. Nowhere in India it is permitted to have land as a security against agriculture advance. So they don't enter that into the system. I take that as a security. I don't enter into system. So system will show unsecured advance. Right? But when it comes to repayment, they will always say that repayment, because there is security available, repayment is not delayed or it's not an NPA, બધું બરાબર ચાલે છે. That argument they will put. Sometimes by mistake they have put security also there, but that is gross error by that person who has done it. Second effect that it has is that at the time of taking security, I am saying that okay, this is the margin that I have. But when that account becomes NPA and then I have to start recovery proceedings, when I reach a point of one-time settlement, I will say that this much security is available. So let's say it was a 50 lakh or 20 lakh loan. I had land value of let's say 15 lakhs. So only 5 lakhs was supposed to have been default for in terms of one-time settlement. So also look at the one-time settlement circular and check all the one-time settlements that happen in your branch. Now 5 lakhs, so what RBI allows? RBI says that 90% of that residual amount you can enter into as OTS. So 90% of 5 lakhs, that is what the banks will say. Now after the settlement is entered into, the amount is received, security is not there. In any case, land cannot be a security. So what happened to the OTS proportion? From 90% to 20%. 4.5 lakhs for 20 lakhs. And this is rampant. It is rampant across all the banks because it has started as a system somewhere. A lot of legacy accounts are there, and those legacy accounts are now coming into OTS. And when they come into OTS, they'll end up into, so bank will end up into trouble later. Once the inspection happens by RBI, then only they will end up into trouble. But you are the first line of defense for RBI or for stakeholders as a branch auditor, and you can always list out OTS which is less than the regulatory requirement. Right? LFAR we have, I think you discussed in detail. Sanction, somebody has question on sanction, you tell me. If I know the answer, I will give. Otherwise, I'll try and find out what the answer is. So, special conditions. I talked about unsecured advance of 10,000 crores. And it is being given. So, it is not new. I think in 2019 or 2018, we came across 4,000 crores of advances to Cotton Corporation, which was unsecured. But there is a circular which says that you can give these unsecured advances only for a period of 30 days, which can be rolled over, of course, for another 30 days, but not more than 6 months. And there is the interest rate floor and cap and all those things. Now, if you come across such a branch and such an advance, then the dynamics will change completely. You cannot follow normal IRAC procedure, you cannot follow normal advance giving procedures, you cannot follow normal sanction procedures. And you need a board approved policy, and these advances have to be approved by the board. Right? In short. So, as an overview, I think you can look at it this way, that those advances need board approval. Starting from there, you look at the circulars, what are the parameters. If the parameters fail, you are bound to report in your audit report and LFR both, because it becomes a serious matter. If there are waivers, and which is now this is also rampant. All banks will say waive this, waive that. It is not only for Adani and Ambani. Mind you, every large corporation, even for a allocated limit, insists that certain conditions they will not give stock statement. Right? They will not file FF or whatever quarterly reports they have to file. All those things are then waived. This goes up the ladder. Sometimes it is approved by the board. Most of the times it stops at some committee, C4 or ECC or something. And it will be then carried forward from there. Moratorium, there is another issue. So if you give moratorium, yeah. So waiver is permitted. No. So far as auditor is concerned, I have not done any approval. So nothing to worry. So what happens is that if you come across this, that's what I am saying, is that you have to look at the regulation which allows this and to what extent, to which customers, all parameters are given. You need AAA rating, this, that. You need corporate guarantee is not the only security that you can have. For example, we ran into Air India account where the entire advance was given on Tata Sons guarantee. Well, Tata Sons were not borrowing. Air India was borrowing. So Air India had borrowed 50,000 crores like this, and entire thing was unsecured. But RBI has given a specific requirement for such type of advance. Of course, Air India is an exception because everybody wanted that they should give money to Air India and therefore it will be taken away from the government. That's a separate issue. But it's still an exception, not part of the regulation. And because of this, it's a precedent. After that, there were several such advances which have come, which are not Air India. But in each case, board has to have a policy how it will monitor this advance. Anybody can become kingfisher, right? And it is not the fault of Kingfisher. It's just that business environment changes and then you are left high and dry and the bank is totally down under the water. That is why it has to be very clear that if there is a waiver condition, it has to be reasonable. It cannot be complete waiver of anything. So if I give away my right of monitoring that advance, then that cannot be allowed by any regulation or exception. Not even board policy can approve of such a process. This is what we were discussing. This is a list of, this monitoring is supposed to be done by the bank. Ideally, this list is not for auditor. But as a derivative, as a consequence, what happens is I get a ready-made checklist of what I should be looking at. And if there is so now auditor is also supposed to report to RBI if there is a failure of monitoring. So there is a case, I don't remember which bank it was, but this RFIA audit reports come. Risk focused audit reports are done by the banks. So every branch is going through this risk focus, they give their compliance. And after the compliance, there is again an audit to see if the compliance is genuinely done. In an area, geographical area, it was found that 100% false compliance was there. They had just written complaint, but they had actually done nothing. No physical compliance was done. Now, if one of the branches comes to you as an auditor, then that is where your focus should be. So, why do we insist on saying that you read previous year report, internal audit report is for this reason, concurrent audit report. That all these people come regularly, they are discounted, they are not considered important. Every day there is an auditor, right? But when a statutory auditor reports, it gets reflected properly. So MOC is not the only thing. MOC, though, you have, whether you give or not is a separate issue. It depends on how much error is there of fact. Here the error of regulation, and that is more serious. Error could be manual, error could be system driven, or it will be corrected ultimately. But if there is a failure of monitoring a regulation, then it may be deliberate attempt to defraud the bank or the whatever customer. Okay, so core of the matter. I think this is pure theory, but all of us put it in practice very sincerely. But the highlight of any audit procedure would be documentation, and a genuine documentation. Don't just generate emails to say that data nahi male, so I am not able to do audit. That is failure of an auditor, not of the bank. Those reports actually bring trouble to central auditors rather than to the bank. You have to, if that is the case, then you have to escalate it to the topmost person till such time as they come and tell you, okay, we can't give you. That type of communication should come from them. If your reasonable demand cannot be fulfilled by the bank for whatever reason, that is the time you can write that, okay, I am unable to do this part of audit because I don't have data for it. But non-cooperation of branch manager, and therefore there is no data available to you, and you say that I am unable to do audit, and you write that report, doesn't reflect well on a profession. So carefully evaluate the situation. Do not try to skip a process. Okay, and have proper sequence of any communication other than your regular documentation of verification. Even where you have the data, where you have cooperation, sequence of communication is important, because as it happened to one of our colleagues, RBI came 2 years later and questioned them that in such and such year you are branch auditor of such and such branch, and this account was there, now it has become NPA. It should have become NPA from back date. What have you done? Why did you not make it NPA back date at that time? Of course, he was able to justify his action by a lot of documents that he had. He had communications, he had also done calculation of how this NPA can happen or cannot happen, when can it happen in future, all those things he was able to justify. But RBI comes after 6 months and it is hindsight which is 100% right. You are at the spot. So that you don't end up into hindsight criminalization, you should at that point record the circumstances in which you make that decision of reporting, not reporting, passing MOC, not passing. So sample, it was discussed in previous session also. I have just made a list. This could apply to you in whatever proportion you want to apply it. Now that LFI requires you to actually disclose that proportion and how you have arrived at it, it is good to know which of these accounts are risky based on your analysis and which of these accounts are not risky. That analysis to come before starting the audit, because you can't on hindsight say, okay, now because I have done these 10 accounts, I will classify them as risky. એવું નહીં થાય. પહેલાં you have to decide beforehand that I consider them risky for these reasons. And therefore I want to check sanction, I want to check security, I want to check documents of that security, if it's a physical security, if it's not physical, it's some movable property or something, then appropriately you can test. A list, sorry, before you go there. So normally, now every bank is required to keep SMA 0, 1 and 2. Right? So SMA 2 is a good indicator for your sample. SMA 2, which is there for last 4 quarters, is extremely good sample for you. One account which was in SMA 2 April, May, June is also SMA 2 in January, February, March, and was also SMA 2 in quarters in between, is an excellent sample to have. It could be diversion of funds, it could be just siphoning of the funds, whatever they hanky-panky they are doing, you can find out from simply by having this type of selection of these accounts, right? So SMA 2, SMA 1 can be, but SMA 1 would be too bulky for you, because then there will be a lot of accounts in 0 and 1. 30 days and up to 60 days, there will be huge number of accounts, then you wouldn't know how much to sample. So SMA 2, I am hoping would be less in the branch that you go to. But if it is more, then I think it is better for you to do all SMA 2 without worrying about the size or the number of days that it takes. Some idea on data analysis, where I will like to take, let's say, which borrowers have maximum default in KYC. So tell me, how is it relevant? Second question, gold loan. Gold loan is a big issue now. After 2-3 frauds in 3 months, right? So first is KYC, second is gold loan. What will you do if there is a default in KYC and the bank has still gone ahead and disbursed the money? You cannot do much, you have to report that. You have to report that, and if it so happens that it's not properly approved, then I think it is better to escalate it before reporting and to say that this, either they have to recall the advance or they have to get the KYC. થોડું જોરથી બોલો, મને સંભળાયું નહીં. You cannot call that person, you have to tell the bank. You can't act directly. So the borrower will be called by the bank, and we have done that. I have done that. In one Chennai, in one branch, I said that you call this borrower, because either this borrower is a fraud or he is creating a fraud, and you will end up with 4 SIF custody going NPA, 1500 crores, right? So you can do that. If it is, you feel it is very serious and bank needs to call the borrower, but then what will happen? It will be you versus borrower, and bank will sit on one side. પેલો જેમ ભાગી ગયો ને, management will run away. In this case, you will be against the borrower, and borrower will tell you 1,000 things trying to convince you. You don't want to be convinced by borrower. You want to be convinced by the documents. So ideally, you ask for the documents. You say borrower ને જે થવું હોય ત્યારે આપણે શું ફેર પડે. It is bank's problem, borrower ને જે થવાનું થાય. For me, if KYC is complete, I need KYC. Or you recall the advance. You can put that remark in the body of your report to say that this advance needs to be recalled. With, of course, the facts, quantification and supporting. Yeah, gold loan. What will an auditor do? Where there is no fraud. If there is a fraud, you already know કે તો gold બધું જતું રહ્યું છે. But where there is no fraud, what will an auditor do? Very, very simple answer. Very simple answer. If there is a gold loan, what will be that loan against? Gold. Right? Gold will be physically present. So what an auditor has to do? Verify. Very simple answer. You have to verify the gold available with the branch. If he's saying that I have given 10 crores of gold loan, then 10 crores worth of gold should be available. You also have right to get it tested. Okay? That is up to you whether you want to exercise that. If test certificate is available, you can go back and verify with whoever has given test certificate. You may find that he is not existing.
Sir, when we go to the audit and we check the gold loan, certain quantity of gold is sealed by the bank. Then how we can verify that the gold is actually with the bank or not?
Correct. So I am saying either it is tested and they have a test certificate. Normally bank will not take a gold without knowing that it is a gold ornament or whatever it is, right? So they will have a test certificate. Now if test certificate is a fraud, I mean it goes beyond a realm of normal statutory auditor to start investigating gold check any. But so far as there is reasonable assurance that this is gold which is certified by a third party and that bank has taken precautions to understand that this is actually gold, valuation versus margin that is required, so 150% of the loan given or whatever for gold loan they require. If it's more for a bank, it is more for a bank. This is how you have to test.
But then we can compel the bank to show the open the seal and so on. Can you compel?
Repeat.
Can we ask the bank to open the seal and show us that gold is actually lying with the bank or not?
That will depend on the size of the loan. If 3 lakh, 4 lakh rupees loan હોય તો I think it will be waste of your efforts rather than trying to verify. So 3-4 crore ની loan હોય તો you can take a sample which has got 3 crore worth of gold loan in a single account. It may be justified. But you are taking a step where you have to then document why you took that step. Right? Sometimes these steps come back to you. So don't do it, because if you open the seal, then missing items could, because you are party to opening the seal, missing items you have to also answer if there is a missing item afterwards. Right? So be careful. Compliance with terms of sanction, there is normally a legal audit report available which says that this borrower has complied with all the terms of sanction. You can rely on the face value, or in extreme cases, take a sample and check whether legal audit report is genuine. There could be a chartered accountant certificate. Without UDIN, do not accept it. With UDIN, verify it.
Sir, regarding gold loan leasing, sir, I have just observed that what happens many times the gold is pledged and the loan is given. Sir, I feel that maybe that gold is in black, purchasing black money and the loan is given. Sir, what we can do with this?
So the mechanism can be anything. Ultimately, what is my responsibility? If I have given loan against gold, gold should be available. Like any stock. Right? The difficulty with gold is that there is a fluctuation in its market value also. And another difficulty is that by looking at it, you can't make out that it is gold. ઘઉં જોઈને ખબર પડે ઘઉં છે, પણ gold જોઈને ખબર ના પડે gold છે. Right? So this is the difficulty. So to try to become expert in gold is not good for us. We have to rely on some documents, document that those documents were available. And maybe you can go back and call that fellow and say that this certificate is given by you. This number, whatever date, So if he says yes, document that also, that we have checked with them, the certificate is given by them. Otherwise, gold khotu nikla, to that fellow is in trouble. We are not, at least we have done our due diligence. So surprise, like somebody was saying, surprise checks તમે કરી શકો, but I wouldn't go that far, except for one case where it happened some years ago when Giant Oil Mill had 900 crores worth of loan and some 600 crores worth of stock hypothecated to several banks. In an annual audit, I just asked for the certificate of a chartered accountant who has verified the stock. So bank said we never get it done because our share is very small. Out of 1,000 crores, it's only 100 crores. So that doesn't matter. I want that verification certificate. So they called up this Makkarpura branch of that bank and said, you appoint whoever chartered accountant is there and find out how much stock is available. So that chartered accountant went there, there was VAT had sealed the warehouse. So VAT seal tu dhyan, CST. Then he went around being a good chartered accountant. And he found that there was a hole as large as a truck and the warehouse was empty. So I did not go, but by proxy I got it verified. You can do that. You can always insist on, if it is a substantial amount of stock which is hypothecated to a bank or branch, you can insist that you get a third party certificate for our confirmation. Okay, interest we saw in the penalty section, that interest is an issue with RBI. It is not only interest on deposits or interest not mapped to MCLR, it is also difficulty with them that if it is versus repo rate or versus any other benchmark, what is the policy under which the bank or the branch has been authorized to give this loan? Another problem with non-standard interest rates given to a borrower is that there is no system-driven control over it. So my system can do only one thing, MCLR plus spread. So it will change MCLR frequently. Spread is already there, so difference will be charged as interest. But you give repo minus 2, you give repo minus half, there is nothing standard about it. Right? Sometimes they do MCLR minus this or repo plus this, whichever is higher or lower or something like that. So system cannot do so much validation of so many variable rates which are decided on whims and fancies or maybe by a structured way of competing with other banks or the market. That is where the problem is surmounted by doing a manual calculation. So the branch resorts to manual interest calculation and then it makes the entries directly into the core bank, CBS, to say that this is the differential interest to be debited or credited. Now the question is, what is the sanctity of this? And if as an auditor I come across that account in my branch, then what do I do? Do I do 100% verification of interest calculation? And how do I say that if this is right, everything is right, or if this is wrong, everything is wrong? I don't have any justification of this answer or that answer. So then we have to only rely on the facts and say that, okay, so far as I have done, these are all wrong. And therefore we do not agree with this, and whatever MOC you give, that is only part of correcting the error, but the problem of the system remains and that you have to flag. If you find everything is right, then you have to make a note that I looked at 10 accounts where this differential interest was given, which system is not monitoring, but we did not find any error. Question that you have to ask at that time is, if the individual dies, whether the proprietor account will also become NPA or only the individual loan account will become NPA. If the system can, how will the system know that person has died? Right? Somebody has to tell system. There again there is another problem. If you tell the system that the person has died and I want to make it NPA, it will not make it NPA. Why? so long as the account is performing as per the requirement of IREC circular, system will not allow you to downgrade it. So for that you will need an escalation. So bank will need an escalation, and it has to be done from back end. And when you do from back end, you create more risk, right? But you don't have to take that stress. You just make a note that yes, they have made the change and it is correctly downgraded. There again RBI is an issue. RBI is saying that you cannot change any IREC status manually. So all banks have said that we do only in 2 cases. Which are those 2 cases? The first one is MOC that auditor gives, right? So how do you automate? It's not possible to automate MOC given by auditor. System ने पहले से खबर पड़ी जाए कि auditor MOC आपने की तो possible नहीं, right? So that is one case which is an exception which RBI ultimately accepted that okay, we agree. The second case is where I just gave an example, એવું કંઈક થાય, where bank knows that the account is now not going to be recovered and therefore it is trying to downgrade it, but system will not allow. Every EOD it will be upgraded. Even in cases where you are doing outside like CCDP, CASPROM, whatever other software are there, after CCDP writes back to CBS, CBS will upgrade it because according to CBS it is not NPA. So they have developed different conditions to allow this manual downgrading, which is supposedly automatic, which also RBI has a problem. So if you come across this type of, so you will notice if you go through the log or if you go through this system, 2 days it is NPA, 3rd day it is upgraded. 2 days it is NPA, 3rd day it is upgraded. Right? Such accounts you should take in your sample. Take only one account, કારણ કે એવું તો કદાચ ઘણામાં થતું હોય. Agriculture, particularly if you are going to a rural branch, then you will find a lot of such accounts. But take them in sample. There is no problem over there. Right. So I have come to end of my presentation. If you have any questions, you can tell me. And if I have not performed as per my KPI, then I am sorry.
So esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as we near the conclusion of this insightful and enriching 2-day seminar on statutory bank audit, it's my privilege to extend a heartfelt note of gratitude on the behalf of Ahmedabad branch of WIRC of ICAI. We are immensely grateful to our esteemed speaker, CA Chirag Bakshi sir, for sharing his valuable insights on the crucial topic of audit of advances. We would also like to express our sincere appreciation to all the speakers, moderators, panelists who have contributed their time, knowledge and expertise to make this seminar successful. A special note of thanks for the organizing committee for the meticulous planning. We would like to extend special thanks to GSC Bank for generously providing us the venue for this seminar. Their support has been instrumental in making this event possible. We would also like to announce, I personally would like to announce that Ahmedabad branch is now accepting sponsorship for 2024-25. Would kindly request your clients to grab this exciting opportunity of giving the sponsorship to Ahmedabad branch. Thank you all for once again being a part of this amazing 2-day seminar. We look forward to welcome you again to the upcoming seminars and the national conferences. Thank you all and Jai Hind.